All right, so move on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my top 10 boxing fights from the 2020's decade. So this is my own personal list. I'll be starting my list at number 1, going all the way down to number 10 of the best boxing fights that we've seen in the 2020's decade. Starting off with number 1 would be Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder in the calendar year 2021. Now, I think Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, their third fight to end the trilogy, was the best fight of the 2020's decade. And I honestly think the third fight was the best fight between Wilder and Fury. It was a perfect way to end the trilogy. Two epic heavyweights going toe-to-toe, blow for blow, to prove who was the better heavyweight in the trilogy. At the time, Tyson Fury was up. The series was won. Tyson Fury, who won the second fight. The first fight ended in a draw. So there was some bragging rights on the line. In this third fight, there was a total of 5 knockdowns scored in the fight. Tyson Fury got dropped twice, with Deontay Wilder hitting the canvas 3 times. And there were several power punches landed. I mean, these guys were going all the way, nearly for 12 rounds, beating the hell out of each other pillar to post in that boxing ring. But it felt like you were watching an epic heavyweight fight in the glory days in the sport of boxing. Everyone loves to see heavyweight fights. Everyone loves to see some knockdowns. Everybody loves to see some knockouts when you're watching heavyweight fights. And there were some good boxing exchanges in this fight between Fury and Wilder. So this fight gave you everything. But in the end, it was Tyson Fury who did get his hand raised and knocked out Deontay Wilder in the 11th round to successfully retain his WBC heavyweight title and to walk away with bragging rights, winning 2 out of the 3 fights against Wilder in their trilogy. One of the best heavyweight trilogies in the sport of boxing. That one was my favorite fight of the 2020s decade. That's number 1 on my list. Now, number 2 on my list, I'm going to go with Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano in 2024. Now, I think Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano in 2024 was the second best fight that we've seen in the 2020s decade. And their second fight was the best fight in their trilogy. The first fight was really special, but the second fight was the icing on the cake between Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor, 2 perfect dance partners in that boxing ring. And the second fight, the rematch, was filled with blood, sweat, and tears. It gave you everything for 10 championship rounds of boxing. And these women stole the show on that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson card that took place last year in November. Streamed on Netflix by over 70 million people watching around the world. And I loved every second of this war. Both women were exchanging bombs in the pocket, fighting, coming forward. There was some great counter-punching exchanges, great boxing IQ displayed by both women. Amanda having success landing power punches, and Katie fought well in different lateral movements. Even with the accidental headbutt, I really think that Amanda fought well with the cut, and I think she should have had her hand raised because she did outland Katie Taylor by over 100 punches in that second fight. It was truly a robbery that happened in Dallas, Texas that night, but it is Katie Taylor at the end of the day did win the trilogy 3-0 on Amanda Serrano. But I think that second fight was the best fight of their respective trilogy. That's number 2 on my list from that fight that they had last year in 2024. Number 3 on my list, I'm going to go with Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury, their first fight that they had in 2024. Their first fight was very excellent. Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury put on an absolute clinic in the sport of boxing in 2024 in the first fight. It went all 12 rounds. Great boxing display between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury. And I scored that fight 115 to 113 in favor of Alexander Usyk. It was a very close fight, but I think Alexander Usyk did enough to pull away in the second half of the fight to outbox Tyson Fury. It was some great boxing IQs displayed. Fighting well in championship rounds. I like the adjustments that both fighters made in between rounds. That was great. But it was the biggest moment of the fight came when Alexander Usyk was rocking Tyson Fury pillar to post all around the ring in the 9th round, where Usyk hit Fury with a lot of combinations, and Fury was rolled up on the back, rolled up on the ropes. He didn't know where he was, and he was trying to retreat for his life, and finally scored the knockdown. I'm surprised that Tyson Fury did not get knocked out there, but I think that sequence in the 9th round really displayed that it doesn't matter really about weight. It matters about the heart, the boxing skills, and how well you can be to adapt to different changes. And we've seen that ever since Usyk moved up to heavyweight. But fighting the guy to become undisputed in Tyson Fury, that spoke volumes to me of how special Alexander Usyk is. But that third fight is on my list. Number 4, I'm going to go back to the woman here. Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. Their first fight in 2022 is fourth on my list. First fight was an absolute banger. And both women displayed how special women's boxing could really be. They put women's boxing back on the map because, honestly, women's boxing was not really talked about for casuals or a lot of people in the sport of boxing. They really don't want to pay attention to women's boxing until this first fight happened in 2022. I think these two respective women truly saved women's boxing. But they fought well for 10 rounds, just like the second fight. Honestly thought Amanda won the first fight as well. But she did lose the final 2 rounds, so I could see why the judges did believe that Katie Taylor did enough to win the first fight. But their first fight is an absolute classic as well. That's number 4 on my list. Number 5 would be Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko. That fight that happened in 2023. Excellent chess match. Great technical boxing between Devin Haney and Vasily Lomachenko. Now, if you look back at 2023, that's when all the big fights were happening again in the sport of boxing. And yeah, there were some big fights that were made, but most of the big fights were lopsided fights. Tank versus Ryan, lopsided. Crawford versus Spence, lopsided. Canelo versus Charlo, lopsided. But this big fight did live up to the hype and was the best fight, in my opinion, in the calendar year 2023. So Devin Haney, he showed a lot of maturity in this fight. He really grew up fighting a great fighter in Vasily Lomachenko. He made great adjustments in between rounds. He boxed well. Him and Lomachenko were going back and forth with some great counter punching, great boxing exchanges. Lomachenko fighting well in different lateral movements. It took Devin Haney a long time to really figure out what Lomachenko was doing in the second half of the fight. But I really look back at that fight and scored 115-113. I think Vasily Lomachenko should have got his hand raised that night and became undisputed at lightweight. But Devin Haney won the fight. Very close, but that's just my opinion. I think Lomachenko, looking back at the fight, I watched it not too long ago. I think Lomachenko was robbed there and should have got his hand raised. But that fight was really good. That's number 5 on my list. Number 6, I'm going to go with Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, the fight that we've seen between the two respective fighters early in the year in 2025. I think Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn was the best fight that I've seen in the calendar year 2025. I said that to you guys a few weeks ago. Epic fight with a great build-up. Best fight of 2025 so far. Back and forth exchanges for all 12 rounds with both of these. It was basically a phone booth fight. We're going to stand toe-to-toe with each other, go blow for blow, just beat the hell out of each other to really put on a good fight. And the build-up was great. There's some rich family history with the fathers of Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank fighting each other decades ago. And I think this rematch is going to be just as good as the first fight. It seems like there's some tension with the rehydration clause that happened in the first fight with Chris Eubank, who was the successful fighter, not wanting that in the second fight. Some shenanigans that happened after the fight where Chris Eubank was really dehydrated with Eddie Hearn not helping him get to the hospital, blocking the ambulance in some type of way. Either way, I think that second fight is going to be really good. But I want to see the rematch. But I think the first fight was the best fight 2025. That goes to number 6 on my list. Number 7, I'm going to go with Arthur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol, the fight that we seen in 2024 last year. The first fight between these two respective fighters was a classic chess match. And both fighters were undefeated at the time. Arthur Beterbiev's power versus Dmitry Bivol's boxing skills. I mean, it was a really good fight. It was very close, but I could see people's point of view that believe that Bivol lost the first fight because he didn't finish strong in the championship rounds, rounds 10, 11, and 12. I think Bivol won, but I can see the point of view of why Arthur Beterbiev won the first fight. But that epic fight was number 7 on my list. Number 8, going back to Arthur Beterbiev. Arthur Beterbiev versus Anthony Yarde in 2023 has to make my list as well. Now, that was a fun fight at light heavyweight. Both power punchers just slugging it out against each other. Anthony Yarde did have a strong showing against Arthur Beterbiev in that fight. And he even hurt Arthur Beterbiev in the 5th round of that fight. But in the end, at the time, Arthur Beterbiev had a 100% knockout ratio. And it just turned it up and found a way to get Anthony Yarde out of there. Scored the knockdown in the 8th round with Anthony Yarde's corner waving off the fight, throwing in the white flag or the white towel, and ending the fight with Arthur Beterbiev being successful, retaining his title, winning the fight by knockout. But that was a really fun fight in 2013 or 2023, excuse me. Number 9, I'm gonna go with Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant in 2021. Now that was a really good fight as well back in 2021. And the build-up was good. Both of these fighters did not like each other at all. And this was Caleb Plant's big break because he was an IBF champion, had one out of the 4 prestigious titles to make this undisputed championship fight happen. So a lot of people didn't know who Caleb Plant was, but he got put on a big stage and had a chance to become undisputed champion fighting Canelo Alvarez. But both of these guys had a really good fight, and Caleb Plant was actually up on the unofficial scorecards. If you guys look back at that fight 4 years ago, Caleb Plant was actually outboxing Canelo Alvarez all the way up until the 8th, 9th round of that fight. So Caleb did everything that he could and did everything correctly, but he just didn't finish strong. He ran out of gas towards the end of the fight. And in the end, Canelo Alvarez started to put the pressure on him, walk him down, land the power shots, land the knockdown in the 11th round. A few moments later, landed the knockout for Canelo Alvarez to become an undisputed champion for the first time in his boxing career at the super middleweight division. But I think that fight in 2021 between Caleb Plant and Canelo Alvarez was really fun. That's number 9 on my list. And to end the list at 10, I'm going to go with Gervonta Davis versus Mario Barrios in 2021. I really enjoyed this fight. You had Gervonta Davis moving up to 140. This is the only time that Tank ever fought at 140 at the super lightweight division, fighting an undefeated fighter in Mario Barrios. Now, honestly, up until that point, up until Tank and Lamont Roach that happened during the spring of this year, I think this Gervonta Davis versus Mario Barrios fight was honestly Gervonta Davis' hardest fight. And I think Mario Barrios gave Tank the biggest issues in the ring, not counting Lamont Roach. Well, now I would say Roach is, but before that point, I think Mario Barrios was Gervonta Davis' toughest opponent. And honestly, Mario Barrios was actually outboxing Gervonta Davis in this first half of the fight. It took Floyd Mayweather to come up to Gervonta and tell him he's down on the unofficial scorecards. Had a pep talk with his coach, Calvin Ford, and then Gervonta Davis put together in the second half and really displayed the power, that the power moved up as he moved up in weight. Scored 3 knockdowns on Mario Barrios, 2 in the 8th round, and then put him away with the body shot, the liver shot that put him away in the 11th round for Gervonta Davis to defeat an undefeated Mario Barrios. But Gervonta Davis had to dig down deep to win that fight in 2021. But I think that's a really elite list. Those are my top 10 fights that happened in the 2020s decade.